So hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jesse Wieland. I'm the Associate Director of the Office of National Fellowships. We have a very special guest today that I'm going to introduce and then allow her to take over. But Michelle Sauer is the Regional Manager for Europe, the Americas, UK, and UK International at Heriot-Watt University, based in Edinburgh, Scotland. Originally from Tallahassee, Michelle earned her BA in History and English Literature from FSU in 2015. After graduating, Michelle moved to the UK for postgraduate study, where she earned an MA in medieval history from Durham University and a subsequent MA in cross-cultural communication and education from Newcastle University. Since 2017, Michelle has worked in UK higher education, recruiting highly qualified international students to study at prestigious UK institutions. And so without further ado, Michelle, please take it.
Okay, yeah, that's me. I went here, so I'm just one of you, even though I've got this bizarre hybrid accent now. Please try your best to ignore it, or if you enjoy it, great, come study with me in Scotland. I'm going to give a little bit of an overview on the Scottish education system and kind of what our universities look like in Scotland, and then we'll go into a bit of information about the university that I work for, which is Heriot-Watt. I'm very, very happy to be completely informal during this process, so don't feel like I'm talking at you. If you've got any questions along the way, shout out at me. I'd rather you ask in the moment than hold on to something until the end and maybe forget what you wanted to know. So without further ado, this is Scotland. Scotland has been voted the most beautiful country in the world year on year by the Rough Guide, and I can attest that that is absolutely true. I've lived in England for about 8 years, but moved up to Scotland just over a year and a half ago, and it is absolutely everything that you see in Outlander. It's a stunning country, really lovely people, very welcoming culture, and especially toward Americans and American students in the major cities like Edinburgh, Glasgow, where we have really big universities, very welcoming culture to American students, and just a really lovely place to live and explore. So why study in Scotland? Obviously, you'll get to see Highland cows, so that's a big win. But we do actually have a world-renowned education system. Scotland is a very, very tiny country. The UK in general is incredibly small, and Scotland is just one piece of that. Yet we have one of the highest concentrations of universities in the world and the highest concentration of universities in Europe. We currently have over 52,000 international students studying with us from 180 countries worldwide. And we're a very flexible education system. So there are over 4,000 different degree combinations that you can do. And that includes at the master's level. And so you'll apply directly onto a program of study, but you do have flexibility even within your master's program, kind of craft it to what you want it to look like. So if you're interested in a number of different areas, there's definitely flexibility for you to study exactly what you want in Scotland. We also have the highest level of student satisfaction in the UK. That's just owed to the fact that we have 19, maybe 20 universities in total, and they're all incredibly highly ranked and very good at what they do. We have a number of comprehensive universities in Scotland, which means they offer every subject area, including medicine, dental, vet med, arts and humanities, social sciences, business, you name it, we've got it. And we also have a number of more niche institutions, so kind of focus polytechnics, STEM institutions, art universities, and that's really what owes to that level of student satisfaction and our high rankings. We have a lot of work placements and internships available. So if you come study with us in Scotland, Scotland as an education system really values kind of the real world practical side of education. And we do have the highest levels of graduate employability within the UK and Scotland as well. Here's all the Scottish institutions. So as you can see, the highest concentration of education within Scotland is in what we call the Central Belt. So that's kind of the space between Glasgow to the west and Edinburgh to the east. But of course, we've got universities going all the way up into the Highlands and Islands. We have the University of the Highlands and the Islands, which is a multi-campus institution across different places within the Highlands and in some of the island sites. Most notably, one of their campuses is on the Isle of Skye, which has been regularly voted the most beautiful part of Scotland. So most beautiful country in the world, most beautiful part of Scotland, couldn't do better than Skye. St. Andrews obviously is very famous for attracting American students, and it's kind of just north of that Central Belt. area, and then a concentration of universities around the Aberdeen and Dundee area on the northeastern coast of Scotland. Scottish degree structure for postgraduate courses is a bit different than obviously what you would see in the US, and therefore often more attractive for US students because you get your degree faster and often cheaper. There are top master's programs, which would be your standard kind of MA, MSc, MBA, etc. Will be a year in length, so that's 9 months of top courses, and then across the summer you'll do your 3 months of dissertation work effectively. And you can also earn your master's by research. Here it says it's a 1 to 3 year duration. I will say the 3-year duration is very uncommon, and typically in res or in MPhil is 1 or 2 years, depending on what level of research intensiveness you're going into. So typically 2 years on the scientific side, a year to 2 years on the arts and humanities side. That's a more in-depth kind of focused degree in comparison to our top master's courses. So the majority of the work that you do across that will be your own project design led, and so entirely research led on an in-res or an MPhil, very little time in class with professors. And so kind of your own preference, if once you graduate your undergraduate, you see yourself going fully into like the research side of academia, maybe that's to consider an in-res or an MPhil if you know exactly what you want to do and want to get started directly on your research project. And then our doctoral study programs tend to be 3 to 4 years of study across the whole of the UK, so that applies everywhere, not just in Scotland. And obviously, I think we all know what a PhD entails. It'll be your own original piece of research work that you'll undertake across the term of study. Obviously, that is much shorter than undertaking a doctoral degree in the US as well, which tends to be 5 to 7 years. So definitely worth considering. If you were interested in studying abroad and you want to get started in kind of your field of work a bit faster, we do allow that quite quickly. Fees and funding for the UK. Now, within Scotland, it varies by institution. Like I said, we have a number of different institutions in terms of niche versus comprehensive. Some are significantly more expensive. For example, the University of Glasgow will be far more expensive than Heriot-Watt University, but the tuition fees tend to start around 15,000 USD per year, depending on what course of study you're going into. Typically, like arts and humanities courses tend to be a bit less expensive than a scientific lab-based course because there's additional fees assessed for undertaking a lab course. The cost of living starts around $12,000 per year across Scotland. Obviously, that's more expensive in bigger cities like Edinburgh, but it tends to be pretty much the same across the country. We don't have significantly high rates for cost of living, and that varies drastically from the rest of the UK because London is one of the most expensive cities in the world. That carries on up to like Manchester and other places within England, but yeah, the cost of living across Scotland tends to be fairly affordable, especially for US students as well. You can use your government funding, and so if you take out US federal loan or FAFSA funding, you can use that to study across the UK. And then all of the Scottish institutions have a number of scholarships available, and typically there are specific scholarships set aside for students from North America. So if you're going through the process of applying to a Scottish university, you'll probably be provided upfront with some information for North American students, but you can also inquire with the scholarships and bursaries teams at each individual institution as to what you would be eligible for. Visas and immigration. This is probably usually one of the sticking points for students on what seems to be the most daunting bit of studying in the UK. But unless you're a dual citizen with a UK passport, you will need a visa in order to study in Scotland. It's a very straightforward process, very step by step. If you're coming onto a short course, so if you choose to study abroad in the UK at an institution for a 6-month period, which is an option at a lot of Scottish institutions, you would not require a visa. So no visa required for US students for courses under 6 months in length, but for those of us that are considering postgraduate study, you will need a visa. Typically, the process takes about a month to a month and a half in length. Your university will provide you with a number that you then use to go through the application process. And once you've done everything, you submit it and you typically get your visa back within 3 weeks' time for North American students. The other thing worth noting on visas is that the graduate visa has come back to the UK, which is a huge blessing. So students who complete a course of study over 12 months with us are eligible to apply for a graduate visa and stay in the UK and work for 2 years after their completed course of study, which is great for anybody who wants to stay. I know when I completed my degree in the UK, it didn't exist at that time, so I had to find creative ways to stay. But for you guys who would like to come over and study and you know that you want to stay, that route is available to you currently. Student accommodation is a bit different from your standard US accommodation. So there will be postgraduate specific accommodation at most UK institutions. We certainly have it and guarantee it for our incoming students. It will all be apartment style living. So you won't be sharing a room with anybody else, but you will share like kitchen facilities and social facilities and stuff like that. And obviously you're also, as postgraduate students, completely able to rent your own apartment and live within the city that you're studying in. And there is dedicated staff at every institution that will help you through the accommodation process, and that includes finding a dependent housing and choosing that. Also, how beautiful is Scotland? And last but certainly not least, student life is very engaged and delightful, frankly, across Scottish universities. In Scotland, across all of our universities, we have over 1,000 student societies, and that means 1,000 unique student societies. So not across all institutions, that's the total number. I mean, there's a Harry Potter club at every institution in Scotland. That is one of the unique student societies. So in terms of your interests, there is something for everyone. If there's not a student society at your university that fits your interests, the Students' Union at that school will 100% support you in creating your own club or organization. So again, very welcoming, very fitted to your own unique individual interests and passions. Scotland has also been rated one of the safest countries in the world. I can say for certain, my university being based in Edinburgh, Edinburgh has been repeatedly named one of the safest cities in the UK and indeed in the world year on year. And we are a campus institution, so an even further added level of safety, but across the whole of Scotland, and to have quite safe campus environments and safe cities overall. We don't have guns and we also don't have snakes. So for me, big selling point leaving Florida. We have loads of student support, and that ranges from everything from extra tutoring to student welfare and mental health services. If there's something that you need help with, there's someone to help you with it on every Scottish campus. We're also really, really big for sports in Scotland. We love it. We love all sports. At my institution in particular, we have every kind of court, pitch, court, tennis, I don't know, available to you. I'm not big into sports, but we have all of the sports, including a number of UK institutions that have American football teams. So you won't necessarily miss out on that element of a US education experience if you're choosing to study in the UK as well. All right, that kind of concludes the section on general Scotland. Does anybody have any questions at this point about Scotland, Scottish universities?
I have a question. Yeah, so I know that a lot of universities in the United States for like postgraduate or graduate school offer like stipends or scholarships if you're willing to work for the university, like for example, be a TA or even like teach like an undergraduate class.
Yeah.
Is that something that universities in the UK or in Scotland offer at all?
Yeah, definitely. They are limited, so it's more few and far between the US institutions, but those opportunities definitely exist. The more common thing that you'll see at Scottish University is the ability to be a research assistant rather than like a teaching assistant. And so particularly if you're doing a lab-based course, you just pair with a professor and be part of like the research assistantship for him or her. And yeah, teaching assistantships aren't as common. Typically most courses like on taught MAs are taught by full-fledged lecturers in the UK. So you might be able to get a position as a grader or a research assistant, but you will probably most likely not be teaching at the master's level in the UK. Just one of the small differences, but yeah, good question. Anybody else?
What does the application process look like? Is it complicated or?
I certainly hope not. It's fairly straightforward. So at the postgraduate level, you'll apply directly to the individual institution.
Okay.
So each institution does have a slightly different process, but it's pretty well standardized across Scottish universities. So what you'll do is you'll basically go onto the page, click the apply now button, and it'll have you create what we call your portal. And so it'll be your application portal. It'll have kind of spaces delineated for everything that you need to submit. So that'll be your transcripts, any test scores that are required, which typically at the postgrad level for the UK, you don't need too many test scores. So like I took the GRE, I wasted $200 because I didn't need it, and I did not go to school in the US, so big fun. But yeah, typically you won't need to submit test scores, and you'll just kind of go through, do your personal statement and everything like that. And depending on the university and depending on the department that you're applying to, for postgrad, you tend to get an answer back pretty quickly. And just from a personal example, I applied in December for my program at Durham University. I got my answer back 6 days later, and I therefore did not complete any of my other applications because I knew exactly where I wanted to go. And that's not the standard necessarily. I think they would normally say 2 to 6 weeks for an answer, but yeah, 6 days. So it can happen like that sometimes.
And you would recommend waiting for the application to start your visa?
You have to.
Oh, you have to,
So
okay.
you have to fully accept your offer, put down a deposit, and then they'll provide you with what's called a CAS. It stands for Confirmation of Accepted Studies, and that's a number that the university gives to you and provides to the UK government that says, yes, we're sponsoring this student to come and study with us, and you can't begin a visa process without that number. Yeah, so typically, I think the earliest you can start your visa process is about 3 months before your program start date. That changed during COVID to 6 months, and I don't know if they pushed it back. So anywhere between 3 and 6 months before your program start date.
Are most of the graduate programs like cohort models or people applying to like a specific faculty member or to work with?
So it depends on what level you're doing. So for top masters, it'll be kind of a cohort. If you're applying for an MRes or an MPhil, typically you'll have a supervisor. So when you submit that application for an MRes or an MPhil, the process includes kind of not as in depth as a PhD, like the dissertation proposal, like what your research is going to look like, and then usually they'll have expected you to look into who you want to supervise. So those will be reviewed directly by the department, and that named supervisor will be part of the application review process. Versus for top masters, typically it goes to the general admissions team for postgraduate. So a bit different. All right, then I'm going to pray that this video works when we go to the next slide, but a bit about Heriot-Watt University. We're one of the, yes, you're allowed to say the more modern institutions in Scotland. We're just over 200 years old. We have a rich heritage really on the STEM and business side of things. So we are quite a niche institution in that. We don't have any arts or humanities, but what we do very, very well. We focus quite heavily, like I said, on that practical side of learning and really on innovation more than anything else. Mm-hmm. It's going to start on that. Not starting on that.
Hey.
It's time to make your future. All you scientists, designers, engineers, entrepreneurs, and tech innovators, break ground, build bridges, build something we don't have a name for yet. Forget the status quo, forget stereotypes. Go global, change your environment, change the environment. Maybe just leave the world a better place than you found it. Like we have for nearly 200 years, now it's your turn. Be future made at Heriot-Watt University.
Great, so that's a decent little overview on what Heriot-Watt has to offer. Is it off to the side now? Yes, okay. Brilliant. So there we go. We are a world top 250 institution. Oh, no. We were named number 235 in the world this year in the QS World Rankings, and we are very, very, very proud of that. Because if you know how many universities there are in the world in total, this is a true statement to what Scotland is as a centre of learning, because we're definitely not the highest ranked institution by far within Scotland. But we are incredibly proud of our ranking, and you can also see a bit of our beautiful campus in the background there, which I'll go into a bit more detail on in a minute. So we are a multi-campus institution. We're considered Scotland's global university or international university. We have 3 campuses within Scotland. Our primary campus and our largest is based in Edinburgh, which is the capital of Scotland and one of the most beautiful cities in the world, at least in my opinion. And then we also have a campus in Galashiels, which is in the Scottish Borders region. That's where our School of Textiles and Design lives. So our fashion students, our interior design students, and that campus exists primarily because it's a really big hub for historic textile production and manufacturing. And we have a lot of strong contacts within industry, particularly for fashion within the Galashiels region. So all of our students undertake some kind of internship or shadowing experience as part of their fashion degree with us. And we also cap all of our numbers quite heavily on our programs that are offered at Galashiels, so that all of our design students have their own studio or workshop or bloom or whatever it is they're working on from day one. And so no one within those programs is ever sharing any kind of facility. We really pride ourselves on giving students the space and practicalities needed to be as creative as possible. We've had a student graduate from our master's in fashion program and go straight onto a job with Chanel this year. So we are very impressed and proud of that. And I'm told everybody that I've met on this entire trip because wow. And our final Scottish campus is in Orkney. I don't know how many people have any idea what Orkney is, but it's one of the furthest northern islands in Scotland, and that's a really unique hub. We call it our living laboratory. It is our marine science, sustainability, and ecology centre. So it's postgraduate only, and the only courses that are taught there are around marine biology and like sustainability within the marine environment. It's a really, really impressive centre. So if anybody is interested in that, we definitely recommend having a look into our Orkney campus because it's something special. We also have campuses in Dubai and Malaysia. They are Heriot-Watt's own institutional presence in Dubai and Malaysia. So all of the programs that are taught across all of our campuses are Heriot-Watt. And so if you come and study with us on a degree at Edinburgh, for instance, you can transfer first semester to the Dubai campus and it will be the exact same program. So that is an opportunity that's available to all of our students as well. You can also apply directly for your master's program at either our Dubai or Malaysia campus and do your entire term of study there. So like I said, these are our Scottish campuses. As you can see, our postgraduate programs start around 18,500. Why does that keep going forward? Pounds, which I think at the moment with the exchange rate is right around 22,000 USD. So decently affordable in comparison to your average master's program cost. And we do have obviously scholarships and bursaries available, and you can use your US federal funding. Like I said, Edinburgh is one of the most beautiful cities in the entire world with great transportation links. Don't know why it keeps doing this, really sorry. So you can very easily get across the whole of the UK from Edinburgh. We've got trains that go absolutely everywhere, flights that take zero amount of time to get over to Northern Ireland. The only place that is really difficult to access is actually Orkney, because that takes quite a while. But it's a beautiful drive, I would say, before you get on the ferry, and then it's a beautiful boat journey. As long as you don't get seasick. Yeah, really, really beautiful place to live. Again, very welcoming, very diverse city, and just a great cultural experience across the board. You'll meet people living in Edinburgh and on our campus that are from over 175 different countries worldwide. It's a really wonderful, wonderful experience to live in Edinburgh. And these are our campuses in Dubai and Malaysia. It's going to go forward, just know it. and it's tricked me. Okay, that's fine. So we were actually the first university in the UK to have a presence in Dubai. We've been there for over 20 years now, but we've just moved to our brand new facility. So everything that is at our Dubai campus is absolutely state of the art. It just opened at the beginning of 2023, and it is just absolutely brilliant place to live and learn as well. It primarily holds our STEM courses and some of our business classes. So if that's an area that you're interested in studying at our Dubai campus, is definitely an opportunity for you. Our Malaysia campus is a bit smaller. It's based in Kuala Lumpur, and it has a number of courses available, but not quite everything that we offer, if that makes sense. We also have only about 4,000 students studying at our Malaysia campus. So if you're looking for quite a small niche experience, that's a great option for you. But if you're looking for a larger scale campus, definitely Edinburgh or Dubai. Our Go Global program, which I kind of mentioned, is our intercampus transfer program. So that allows our students who come to study with us to transfer to one of our other campuses for a semester or at the undergraduate level for a full year or for the duration of your program. So if your program is on the Go Global system, which the majority of them are, you would be able to undertake a top master's program for half of the time in Edinburgh and half of the time at Dubai or Malaysia, which is a really unique educational experience that only Heriot-Watt really has to offer. We are incredibly strong for student support as well as our teaching and learning. We're in the top 5 across the majority of our engineering, mathematics, accountancy, and finance programs. And we are first in Scotland for aerospace science, as well as our general engineering programs. And that's across our undergraduate and postgraduate levels. We also have literally every kind of student support available on campus. So like I mentioned, we are a campus institution, which is a bit rare for the UK. So we are a single site, much like FSU, but we're set on 380 acres of parkland, so every kind of green space that you can imagine. We have a duck pond on campus, don't touch the swans. I watched a kid get attacked once, it was great. Not great, horrible, not great. I didn't revel in it at all. We have hiking trails on campus as well, which is incredibly rare for any kind of university campus to have trails that go on forever. But yeah, it's a really beautiful and unique experience. We also have a doctor on campus and a dentist on campus. As a student, you'll register directly with them and you never have to worry about getting an appointment or having to travel off campus for that. We're very, very close to Edinburgh City Centre. We're about 25-30 minutes by bus, and typically bus travel for students in Scotland is either free or heavily discounted. So it's quite easy for you to get around by public transport, and our bus system does go to and from campus pretty much every 15 minutes, and we have a night bus that goes to and from Edinburgh City. So again, with safety in mind, you couldn't be much safer than you are at Heriot-Watt. We have 24/7 safeguarding services available as well. So if you do find yourself in a situation, even if you're off campus, you'll have an app from our safeguarding team, and you can just basically press the blue button and they will get in contact with you directly and sort out whatever the situation is. If they need to call the police, they'll do that on your behalf. And so you can feel very comfortable and safe and effective at Heriot-Watt. And we have, again, every kind of student society organization that you could possibly imagine. And if we don't have it, you can create it. And then our Orion Center, which I'll show you on the next page, includes our student gym and all of our recreational and fitness facilities. We're home to Scotland Rugby. So the national team actually practices in place on our huge indoor rugby pitch on campus, so you can always snag free tickets as a student to go see a rugby match, which I think is a uniquely Scottish experience. Right, this is our Orion Centre. Again, every kind of sport that you can imagine. We're very, very high level for soccer. So if you are a performance athlete, particularly playing soccer, we have some quite high level scholarships available. That includes usually a 50% tuition fee waiver, and if you are interested in coaching, we do have a number of coaching scholarships available that are a full ride, which is unheard of within the UK. So very unique in that respect as well. Here's just a little bit about what some of our students have had to say about their experience of studying with us. Oh, apparently you're not allowed to read it. Great. But yeah, typically, like I said, we have very, very high student satisfaction rates. and particularly with the programs that we offer, being so niche, students really have a hands-on wonderful experience studying with us. And that's my face. So what questions can I answer for you guys, if any?
Yeah, I had a question.
I was just wondering, if I remember correctly, you did your undergraduate and your study at Durham in sort of more humanities, social science.
Yeah.
And I know Heriot-Watt is STEM
Yeah.
focused,
Yeah.
STEM business focused.
Yeah.
What made you decide to work with them?
I primarily decided to work for them because one, the job was available.
That's right, yeah.
But secondly, they've just got a really good reputation from students that have studied there. I've never heard a bad word said about the institution. So when we moved up to Scotland and I was looking for a new job, there are a number of Scottish universities that were looking for a representative. And yeah, after applying to Heriot-Watt, learning a bit more about it, hearing what our students had to say, and as well as meeting the amazing staff on campus, it was a no-brainer for me.
So you mentioned that you applied in December for your graduate program. Do most of them work on like a rolling basis, or so it doesn't really matter
So
exactly?
it'll depend on what program you're applying to. So for more competitive postgraduate programs that have fewer spaces, we'll have kind of a deadline or a cap on when you need to apply by if you want to be considered fully for a place on that program, and that'll be very clearly spelled out on the application page. Typically the UK timeline for making applications is a bit behind the US timeline. So if you're applying to US schools and UK schools, you can typically do your US applications first and then like breathe for a hot minute and then start your UK applications. So I did mine to Durham quite early, all things considered, because I wanted to apply for scholarships and bursaries. And in order to apply for certain scholarships in the UK, you have to have like already be holding an offer to study there. So I did mine during like winter break. So as soon as classes finished here, I was like, do my application, and yeah, got it back 6 days later, and then started applying for my scholarships. Obviously the undergraduate system is a bit different. There is like a deadline on that, but for postgraduate across the board, for the most part, it tends to be a rolling application, and you won't really hit like a hard deadline until about May, and that's primarily for visa purposes.
So for a lot of the STEMs, oh, sorry, no, did you have a question? Did I get something?
wait.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I'm so sorry, let it in. So for a lot of the STEM students that I work with,
Yeah.
who might, already be planning on a PhD.
Yeah.
And I know this might be, it depends question, but would like the pursuing your PhD in the UK be pretty transferable if they wanted to come back to the US in most cases, or would it be like better to look at maybe a relevant master's degree program and then pursue their PhD back here, or?
So typically they'll transfer back, no
Okay.
problem. The only degrees that have issues most of the time is if you're doing anything in like the law or medical fields where
Yeah.
there's like specific tests or exams that you have to have passed, or like you need a conversion course back in the States. But yeah, typically the rigor of a UK PhD is so high because there aren't a lot of like classes associated with it. You don't have to undertake like teaching experience unless you're going to become a teaching academic. It is intensely research focused. You and your supervisor, basically you just spending 19 hours a day in the library doing your thing, having their friends, which is great for the research community, absolutely love it. But yeah, they tend to transfer back quite easily. If they are looking in the STEM field as well, I mean, obviously certain universities are going to be better for PhD in terms of like quality being recognized, but overall, yeah, they tend to transfer back without issue.
Okay.
If they want to go into like an academic field, there's probably a set of universities to consider. But again, in the UK, like our facilities are top notch across the board, for schools that are very nichely focused on STEM, so they will get at least the same quality or higher level research intensity experience in the UK.
Thank you.
What are the biggest cultural differences, like specifically focused in higher education, that like might catch an American student off guard?
Yeah, the grading system. That is one thing that threw me for an absolute loop when I moved over. So within the UK grading scale, it's still out of 100, which is bizarre, but 70% on an assignment is considered an A. It's very, very rare on any kind of written assignment to get higher than an 80%. So for instance, my first like piece of work that I did, I got a 67, and then dropped dead in the classroom when they gave me my mark back because I was like, I've never gotten below like a 90 across my and they're like, but you did a great job, and I was like, the number does not suggest that. So yeah, in terms of that, I would say that's the biggest educational cultural difference. In terms of overall cultural differences, I think we're all aware of the major ones. The tiny vernacular differences is what really got me. So in the UK, they'll tend to say they're going somewhere for a certain time rather than at a certain time. So when I moved over and was like hanging out with my flatmates for the first time, they made a dinner reservation, and they were like, oh, I made a reservation for 7, and I was like, oh, who else is joining us? It's just us. It was like, 4 of us. They're like, yeah. It was like, so who else is joining us? This conversation went on a lot longer than I'm willing to admit before I was like, do you mean at 7 p.m.?
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the biggest, I think, differences that will like catch people off guard. But in terms of the education system, I try to prepare people as best as possible. And I feel like most of the reps across the board that are in my position in speaking with an American student will try at some point to slip in, like, by the way, you're not going to get more than a 70% on your first assignment.
I feel like the name of the university is really relevant because of my brief experience in Scotland. I felt like I was saying what more than anything else, because the accent was like uniquely hard for me to understand. I don't know if that's me from being from the South or
no. Well, I mean, so Heriot-Watt is named after 2 scientists, George Heriot and James Watt. You might have heard of the Watt as in light bulbs. That's him, that's that guy at our institution. Amazing, we created light, no we didn't. But yeah, you will say Watt an awful lot when you're adjusting to the Scottish accent. In Edinburgh, not so much, because it's more, like I said, it's a diversity in terms of hearing a Scottish accent. It's not as frequent as you would expect. I live in Glasgow. I still can't understand anyone at any time, on any day, anywhere. It is the heaviest accent I've ever heard in my entire life. I don't know if I will ever adjust to it. So if you happen to find yourself wandering around and you bump into a lovely person from Glasgow, they're called Glaswegians, you won't understand them, just smile and nod, because they're still friendly, even though the accent sounds like they're consider murder.
You mentioned the graduate visa for, after you graduate, if you wanted to stay there.
Yeah.
But you did mention that only lasts for 2 years.
Yes.
Is it very difficult to get citizenship? Like, what if you wanted to stay for longer than 2 years afterward?
Yeah, so in terms of getting citizenship, not a difficult process. I don't actually have mine yet, but we're approaching it. It might be a little bit tricky at that 2-year juncture, but if you've stayed on and gotten a job with a company that you've then built that relationship with over the course of 2 years, getting your further visa sponsored is usually not that difficult, because they'll know who you are, they'll know what kind of job you do, and they'll be saying, yes, we definitely want to sponsor this person's visa for them to stay on. Typically, sponsored visas are good for 5 years, so that would put you at 7. You can get citizenship at 5.